Never mind, I see.
Okay, live on UGTV and YouTube, live on YouTube and UGTV should be starting here shortly. Live on UGTV.
All right, good evening. Before I call the meeting to order, I want to announce that due to COVID-19, some committee members, staff, and public are attending remotely via Zoom as well as on-site. All participants joining by phone should mute their phones when not speaking to avoid background noise. During the meeting, please make sure that you announce yourself by name and title every time you speak so the public that is observing knows who is speaking. This is critical given the number of remote participants and his current guidance from the Kansas Attorney General. Due to COVID-19 requirements, in-person public comment has been suspended unless otherwise required by law. The public is allowed to participate by Zoom or submit comments by email prior to the meeting, and those comments will be included in the record of this meeting. Now call the meeting to order. The clerk, please call the roll.
Roll call: McKiernan,
Here.
Ramirez,
Here.
Johnson,
Here.
Kane, Markley,
Here.
Walters,
Here.
Philbrook,
Here.
Bynum,
Here.
Burrows,
Here.
Townsend, Alby.
Here. The invocation is being given by Commissioner Harold Johnson of Faith Deliverance Church of God in Christ. Please stand and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let us pray. Eternal and magnificent God, we thank you for this day that you've allowed us to see. Lord, I am mindful today of just the thousands of families who are bereaved day by day, dealing with this COVID-19 pandemic. I pray that you would give them the graces they need to sustain them during these times. I pray for the public safety officials that go into danger and their family wait day by day to make sure they come home at night. I pray, Lord, that you would be with them, that you would cover them and their families during these seasons. Be with us as commissioners, as leaders of this county. Give us the wisdom and the grace to lead this county in ways that would be pleasing to you, that would be mindful to the least of them, those that are lost and those whose voices cannot be heard. I pray that, Lord, we be pleasing in all that we say and do so that you be glorified. And I pray this in the name of Christ Jesus our Lord. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'd ask the clerk, are there any revisions to tonight's agenda?
There is a revision to the agenda, Mr. Mayor. Under the administrator's agenda, item number 2, the overview for the snow removal program will be presented at a later date. That item was for information only.
Thank you. Tonight, we have two distinct parts to our meeting, the planning and zoning portion first, followed by regular commission. I'd ask the clerk to read the statement required by state law governing the planning and zoning portion of our meeting, followed by the items on the planning and zoning consent agenda.
We would like to welcome all present to this meeting of the Unified Government Commission. Members of the commission are Mayor David Alvey, Commissioner Melissa Bynum, at-large District 1, Commissioner Tom Burrows, at-large District 2, Commissioner Gail Townsend, District 1 is unable to join us, Commissioner Brian McKiernan, District 2, Commissioner Christian Ramirez, District 3, Commissioner Harold Johnson Jr., District 4, Commissioner Mike Kane, District 5 is unable to join us, Commissioner Angela Markley, District 6, Commissioner Jim Walters, District 7, and Commissioner Jane Philbrook, District 8. As each petition is called this evening, all persons for or against will be given the opportunity to express their views. As if this is the first time that a particular petition has been before this commission, the commission has 3 options. Number 1, it can approve the recommendation of the planning commissions with 6 votes. Number 2, it can override the planning commission's recommendation, but it would take 8 votes to override. And number 3, it can return the matter to the planning commission for further consideration together with the statement specifying the reasons for the referral back to the planning commission. The consent agenda is the first part of the planning and zoning agenda. Items on the consent agenda have received a unanimous vote or recommendation by the planning commission. Unless there is a request to set aside an item from the consent agenda by the applicant, a member of the public, the Unified Government Commission, or staff, then the Planning Commission's recommendation on all items on the consent agenda will be adopted by the Unified Government Commission at one time. I will read the list of agenda items on the consent agenda, and when I have completed the list, the mayor will ask if there are any requests to set aside from the consent agenda. This is your time to raise your hand and request that an item be set aside if you do not agree with the Planning Commission's recommendation. If you contacted the UG Clerk's office, that item will be set aside by the UG Clerk on your behalf. If an item is set aside, the matter will be discussed and voted upon separately. All items not set aside will be approved with the Planning Commission's recommendation. Most of the petitions before the commission tonight may be determined by a simple majority vote. However, if protesting property owners representing 20% of the land area within 200 feet of the area in question have signed and filed a protest petition, at least 9 votes by the commission will be required to approve the change of zone petition. We appreciate the attendance of those people here this evening, and we recognize the importance of each petition. We would remind you that there are a number of items on the agenda, and we would appreciate your efforts to make your remarks as concise as possible. We ask that anyone who is joining by Zoom or by phone to mute your phone when not speaking to avoid background noise so you will not disturb the meeting. Once the petitioners make their presentation, anyone for or against will be allowed the maximum 3 minutes to state your views. This is your time to raise your hand. When your name is called, please state your name and city for the record. The mayor and commission are required to disclose contacts with proponents or opponents on any item on the planning and zoning agenda. I will ask if any member of the commission wish to disclose any contact with proponents or opponents on any items on the agenda.
Commissioner Philbrook, SP 2020-58, opponents.
Commissioner McKiernan.
Commissioner McKiernan, opponents of SB 2020-65 and opponents of SB 2020-66.
Commissioner Bynum.
Opponents of SP 2020-65 and 66, opponents of SP 2020-58.
Okay.
I will now read the items on the consent agenda. Change of zone application, we have one item, 3228 Chase Thompson. Change of zone from R1 Single Family District to AG Agricultural District for a garden, pond, and tree farm at 3100 South 74th Street, recommended for approval. Special use permit applications, item 1, SP 2020-45, Todd Huffman with Dent and Detail Clinic. Renewal of a special use permit for an auto body shop at 5015 Gibbs Road, recommended for approval for 2 years. Item 2, SP 2020-65, David Showalter, renewal of a special use permit for a short-term rental Airbnb at 433 Ann Avenue, recommended for approval for 2 years. Item 3, SP 2020-66, David Showalter, renewal of a special use permit for a short-term rental Airbnb at 709 North 5th Street, recommended for approval for 2 years. Item 4, SP 2020-68, Rafael Castillo Carrera, renewal of a special use permit for a temporary use of land to park a work vehicle in the driveway at 2903 Shearer, recommended for approval for 1 year. Item 5, SP 2020-75, Terry D. Mason with Positive Roles Models into Demanding Excellence, renewal of a special use permit for a group home emergency shelter at 1634 South 29th Street, recommended for approval for 5 years. Item 6, SP 2020-76, Ferris Ferrasati with KC Outlook Rosedale LLC, renewal of a special use permit for a daycare center at 2605 West 39th Avenue, recommended for approval for 2 years. Item 7, SP 2020-78, Jamie M. Reddick, home occupation special use permit for a single customer salon at 2947 North 83rd Street, recommended for approval for 2 years. Item 8, SP 2020-80, Mary Mello with Robin Beebe, special use permit for a short-term rental Airbnb at 3716 Springfield Street, recommended for approval for 2 years. Item 9, SP 2020-81, Sherry Gate with Friendship Inc., Renewal of a special use permit for a temporary lodging for families at the University of Kansas Health Systems at 4146 State Line Road, recommended for approval for 10 years. Plan review application, we have one item, PR 2020-18, William Lanier Jr. with Lanier United. Preliminary and final plan renewed for a mixed-use development at 500 Minnesota Avenue, 600 State Avenue, and 645 Nebraska Avenue, recommended for approval. Miscellaneous ordinance are as follows. Item 1 is an ordinance granting a temporary special use permit for a shipping container for storage of boxing ring and chairs at 330 Strong Avenue, recommended for approval. Item 2, an ordinance granting a special use permit for a restaurant drinking establishment with live entertainment venue at 7540 Strong Avenue, recommended for approval. Item 3, an ordinance granting a special use permit for a short-term rental Airbnb at 1101, 1103, 1107, and 1109 North 79th Terrace, recommended for approval. Item 4, an ordinance granting special use permit for a short-term rental Airbnb at 3107 301 South 7th Street, recommended for approval. Item 5 is an ordinance granting a special use permit for a short-term rental Airbnb at 322 Cambridge Street, recommended for approval. Item 6 is an ordinance granting a special use permit for a pet grooming business at 7114 Parallel Parkway, recommended for approval. Item 7 is an ordinance granting a special use permit for a short-term rental Airbnb at 4028 Booth Street, recommended for approval. Item 8, an ordinance granting a special use permit to keep a horse at 741 South 76th Street, recommended for approval. Item 9, an ordinance granting a special use permit for a temporary use of land to keep lawn care equipment at 1701 South 40th Street, recommended for approval. Item 10, an ordinance granting a special use permit for a temporary use of land to park 2 semi-trucks at 3232 Sewell Avenue, recommended for approval. Item 11, an ordinance granting a special use permit for marketing and assembly related to the applicant's business at 11552 Parkview Avenue, recommended for approval. Item 12 is an ordinance granting a special use permit for a short-term rental Airbnb at 819 Southwest Boulevard, recommended for approval. Item 13 is ordinance granting a special use permit for a short-term rental Airbnb at 431 North Thompson, recommended for approval. Item 14 is an ordinance granting a special use permit for a 10-day transfer facility for non-regulated hazardous materials and hazardous waste at 1620 South 45th Street, recommended for approval. Item 15, an ordinance granting a special use permit for a dog grooming business at 401 South 82nd Street, recommended for approval. Item 16, an ordinance granting a special use permit for an automotive repair business at 1017 Miriam Lane, recommended for approval. Item 17, an ordinance vacating a street at 3740 North 35th Street, recommended for approval. Item 18, an ordinance vacating an alley at 1521 South 40th Street, recommended for approval. Item 19, an ordinance repealing ordinance 0420 and enacting a new ordinance vacating utility easements and deleting the right of re-entry at 2600 by state, recommended for approval. Item 20 is an ordinance repealing ordinance 01120 and enacting a new ordinance vacating utility easements and deleting the right to re-entry at 10 East Cambridge Circle Drive, recommended for approval. Item 21, an ordinance repealing ordinance 01220 and enacting a new ordinance vacating utility easements and deleting the right to re-entry at 1155 Adams Street, recommended for approval. Our last item is an ordinance granting a special use permit for continuation of a parking lot outside storage of used damaged and undamaged, operable and inoperable vehicles, boats, and construction farm equipment and machinery for wholesale, online, and retail auction at 6130 Kansas Avenue, recommended for approval. Those are all items on the consent agenda.
Thank you. Does any member of the commission, the administrator, or public wish to set aside any item on the planning and zoning consent agenda? If an item is not set aside, all items on the planning and zoning consent agenda will be voted on by one vote to follow the recommendations of the planning commission.
Move to approve
Mr.
all
Mayor, we
items
do
as
have one
submitted.
item that was requested by the clerk's office to be set aside. And that is item number,
SP 2020-75.
yes, sir, SP 2020-75 has been requested to be pulled off from the clerk's office.
Thank you. Does Planning Commission have any requests? Does any member of the public again have any requests to set aside an item? Rocky, do we have any requests?
We do. We have Robin and Mary. Would you like me to ask them which one they would like to set aside?
Yes, please.
Hello there.
Hello.
I'm so sorry. I don't want anything to be set aside. I got on just a few minutes late and I was wondering if the Airbnb special permit for 3716 Springfield Street was on this list.
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. My apologies.
Okay. Okay, Rocky, was there anybody else?
There is no one with their hand up.
Thank you very much. So we have one set aside, SP 2020-75.
McKiernan, move to approve all items as submitted.
Ramirez, second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Roll call, McKiernan,
Aye.
Ramirez,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Markley, Walters, Philbrook,
Aye.
Bynum,
Aye.
Burrows.
Aye.
The vote is 8-0. That motion carries.
Thank you. That takes us to set aside item B5, special use permit application SP 2020-75, Terry Mason with positive role models into demanding excellence for a group home and emergency shelter at 1634 South 29th Street. The Planning Commission recommended approval for 5 years. I'd ask staff to make some opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning. SUP is for a renewal of a group home. There have been no notice of violations. We did receive some opposition. The neighborhood, after the City Planning Commission hearing, did file a protest petition, but after reviewing with staff, it was determined that it did not meet the threshold. It is not valid. So it does not require a supermajority, one way or the other. Their applicant is requesting a total of 6 non-family adults. Again, the code allows for 5 non-related adults to live in the home. They say that they're parking 4 cars max. There will be some back and forth for social services and other services to the location. It has been out of operation for some time, and the applicant hopes to again bring some new at-risk youth into the location. We support the City Planning Commission's recommendation for approval.
Thank you. I'd ask the applicant to present his application. Please state your name and address for the record.
Hello, my name is Matthew Sutton. I live at 1628 South 29th Street.
Mr. Sutton is not the applicant.
No, I'm looking for the applicant. Terry Mason? Mr. Mason, are you zooming in?
I believe he has his hand raised, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mason, I've unmuted you.
Go ahead and speak, Mr. Mason. Mr. Mason, are you with us?
Mr. Mason, I see your hand up, but you are unmuted and you are able to speak. Mayor, I'm not sure if he's having technical difficulties, but he is unmuted and ready to speak.
Yeah. Is there another way he can call in if he's,
Mayor, I might recommend that we could move to the next item on the agenda or the first item on the non-consent, and then we could maybe work with Mr. Mason and see if we can get him onto the system. He may need to sign off and sign back in order to be able to talk.
okay, we'll move on. We'll come back to this item. So Mr. Sutton, hang on there. We will be coming back to this item for you as well. All right, that takes us to the planning and zoning non-consent agenda. Item number 1, special use permit 2020-58. Christopher Phillips request for a special use permit to store equipment and work trucks at 3201 Pomeroy Drive. The Planning Commission voted 7-1 for denial. I'd ask staff to make some opening remarks.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, hold on one second, I'm gonna close my door, there's some noise outside. Sorry about that. Yes, this is Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Urban Design. Mr. Phillips is asking for a special use permit for the storage of heavy materials. About a year and a half ago, Mr. Phillips received a change of zone to agriculture for his property. At the time, he said that he one day hoped to build a house and move his family there. And in the interim, he wanted to build a barn to hold animals and to enjoy his property. Since that time, we've received multiple calls from the public in regards to large equipment and work trucks. Mr. Phillips owns a construction company. The members of the public believe that he's essentially using it as a staging ground where his employees essentially come in the morning, pick up the trucks, go do their work, and then drop the trucks off and leave at night. We have 3 notices of violation that we have issued on this property over the summer, roughly, one of which has been resolved. The one regarding heavy machinery is to be resolved potentially by this special use permit. Although generally the protocol for special use permits is once you engage in the entitlement process, you essentially stop doing what you were doing on the property. He has continued to store heavy machinery, and we've received multiple complaints through this entitlement process from the public that the use is still going on. Second NOV was for his fence and a gate. He removed the gate off his driveway, and he also took the obstruction out of the fencing. So it essentially is a as-right agricultural zone fence. So that's been resolved. The third NOV was for a second gravel driveway, and we're still working through to resolve that issue. It's been removed from the driveway. Access has been removed within the public right-of-way, but it still exists on the property. So our zoning enforcement officer is working through that. Additionally, some of you are most likely familiar that we did not have a burn season this year. There was a fire on the property that the fire department was brought out to in August, I believe. And the fire marshal did issue a citation as well for this and other reasons, essentially using the property not as originally proposed from his original entitlement for the change of zone. We support the City Planning Commission's recommendation for denial. There was another protest petition submitted for this property as well. It was deemed valid. If the Board of Commissioners wanted to overturn the City Planning Commission's recommendation of denial and approve this, it would require 9 votes.
All right, thank you. I'd ask the applicant to present his application. Mr. Phillips, please state your name and address for the record.
I'm sorry, what name are you calling again?
The applicant, which would be Christopher Phillips.
There's no Christopher Phillips in the attendees list.
Okay. Now open the public hearing. Ask the clerk, have you received any notification from the public who wish to express their comments in favor of this item?
No requests were submitted in support.
No comments expressed in support. Is there anyone from the public have you received any notification of opposition from the public regarding this item?
Yes, Mr. Moore, we have several that submitted requests for opposition. The first is James Brennan.
I'm sorry, I should have said, is there anyone zooming in who would like to speak in favor of this petition?
There are no hands raised.
Thank you. All right, now we'll move on to those who would like to speak in opposition. Please state your name and city of residency for the record.
The first name again is James Brennan.
James Brennan.
There is no James Brennan in the attendees list.
Our next request was from John Alt.
I'm sorry,
John Alt.
Mr. Alt, John Alt.
There is no John Alt in the attendees list.
Marcia Bierman.
Marcia Bierman.
There's no Marcia Bierman in the attendees list.
Larry Brodenson.
Larry Frodinson.
Brodenson.
Brodison.
There is no Larry Brodenson in the attendees list.
Our next is a Nancy Brodenson.
Nancy Brodison.
There is no Nancy Brodenson in the attendees list.
Is there anybody else left in the county? Could you?
Nancy Mark.
I'm sorry, Nancy
Mark.
Marks.
There is no Nancy Mark in the attendees list.
We received a request from Jeff Whitener to just note for the public that he is in opposition. Our next person is Gordon White in opposition.
Gordon White.
There is no Gordon White in the attendees list.
We also have a letter from Steve Nerschel and Jody Nerschel in opposition. A letter was submitted from Paul Constant. It would like to be read in the record. And the letter reads, I own Homestead Residential LLC, which owns 27 acres north of Phillips, a property. We have owned this property for nearly 18 years. We have paid residential tax, property tax throughout, not wanting to change the zoning to ag because of our plans to develop the property for residential use. Our most recent plan has been to build some ponds and sell 2 to 3 large estate lots to buying, wanting to build upscale homes. Our model is the 40 acres with a pond located on Luke Lane that we sold in 2011 to Tom Timmings, who built a beautiful $100 million home. However, after Phillips bought the acreage south of Homestead, 27 acres, and bought his construction company operations, our plan to develop our 27 acres have been stopped cold. For who we want to invest in an upscale estate next to an industrial use site. Hopefully, when Phillips' special use permit is denied, he is forced to comply with ag zoning, we can proceed with our plans to add some attractive improvements to the residential areas. I have read the UG's ag zoning specs and can find nothing that would even remotely allow Phillips' present use in ag zoning. Reading through higher intensity uses, it was not until C3 zoning that there was even a mention of contractor use. We're now flittering the 9M1 light industrial look like the use under Phillips' most qualifier. However, even there under M1C2 and C7 sections, is outdoor storage and trucks or large equipment would not be allowed. Regarding a special use permit to store equipment and coming and going daily of his trucks, large equipment and crews is clearly not an ag storage use for the property. Furthermore, I say nothing that would allow Phillips to dump debris in the low areas, which is a serious concern to me because of our plans to construct safe, uncontaminated ponds downhill at lower elevations for homeowners with families. As a businessman myself, I feel sorry for Phillips, but it appears to me that he made an unfortunate investment trying to use ag zone property for industrial uses. Quite established residential neighborhood does not appear to be legal, nor does it even make sense. Surely as a sharp businessman, that would must be, he would be able to sell or find more appropriate use for the property and move his construction company to a more appropriately industrial zone location. Respectfully, Paul D. Constant. We also have a Jonathan Oyer who submitted a request in opposition.
Jonathan Boyers?
Boyer, Jonathan Oyer.
Mr. Oyer, you're able to speak.
Huh.
Can everyone hear me?
You might want to lean into the microphone.
Testing. Can anyone hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was just calling in to complain. It smelled like burning plastic or something on the night of the 21st. I'd asked several neighbors if they knew the source of the fire, the smell, and everywhere I talked to and looked at pointed towards this address. I don't know if they're burning. It almost smelled like a conduit, like you'd smell like hot electrical, like burning conduit. I don't know if they're burning the conduit off of lines to salvage the scrap metal or what they're burning, but it was horrendous, and I'm several miles away, or at least a couple. But I could only imagine the reduced air quality in the immediately surrounding area, and especially my area. That's just all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in opposition?
Mr. Mayor, this is Gunnar Hand. I just got an email from Mr. Brennan. As they did at the City Planning Commission hearing, several members of the neighborhood in opposition have gathered at Mr. Brennan's house, and he just noted that they're unable to enter the meeting for some reason. So we're working on that with them right now.
Thank you. Well, I think they're in opposition, correct? I think we will move forward here.
Mayor, we can't hear you.
I think we can move forward here. Rebecca Newsom.
Mayor, if you're speaking, we can't hear you. Are you speaking into the microphone?
I think so. Did you not hear that?
No, we are not able to hear you. Gunnar, are you able to hear him?
Very faint. I can't make anything out though.
Same here.
I don't know what's going on here. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you better.
Okay. Rebecca Newsing. Is there anyone with that name, Rocky?
No, there is not.
Okay. Well, I'm going to close the public hearing.
We do have an attendee with their hand up. Am I able to call on them?
It looked like it's probably Jeff Wilder that we had called his name earlier.
Okay.
Jeff Widener? Okay.
Yes, well, yes. You may. Please state your name and address, please.
Mr. Widener, you're able to speak?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
This is Jeff Widener at 3640 Pomeroy Drive. And I oppose the construction company being on the Pomeroy Drive area. I lived in the area since 1979, and it's been a nice, quiet, comfortable neighborhood, and with no disturbance of industrial equipment until just recently. I don't believe it's right that he has zoned this as agricultural and then brought in commercial industrial equipment. I have several other people here with me, and we've been trying to get through on this Zoom, and all of the names that you have called that are in opposition are here with me. If you would allow those names to be called again, we would like to speak toward this matter.
I think you may. I also think we could carry this forward to a vote.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, I think after the commissioners say a couple of words, then.
yeah. Is there any comments from the commission or questions? Commissioner Bynum?
I've been working with this neighborhood for more than 6 months on this item. I live in this neighborhood, so I've been watching this activity for more than a year on this property. I've spoken with many of the residents who are at Mr. Widener's property hoping to speak tonight, but I believe that we can bring this to a resolution. And I greatly respect the comments that they made at the planning and zoning meeting. We all waited a very long time for them to be able to make their comments, as anyone who attends one of those meetings does. They've also lived with this constant disruption of this residential area now for a good long while. They've put in all of the footwork needed to follow our legal procedures for the petition process. They've done every single thing, including wait very, very patiently through our COVID-19 pandemic nightmare. And as you can see, all of the struggles that it has presented to us. And so I think they've done more than enough to be able to have a return to their residential lifestyle. And I would turn it over to Commissioner Philbrook if she had a comment, but I'm ready to make a motion.
Well, I have a request because I'd like Gunnar Hand to get on and succinctly mention exactly what the issues have been. And then that way everybody gets to hear what the issues are from our planning and zoning people. And then move forward if you don't mind.
I thought he did that at the beginning. He
Well,
noticed the three.
He did a little bit.
He did the notices of the 3 notices of violation. And so,
Gunnar, I need to ask you a couple of questions. Can you come back on if you're there?
I'm here, Commissioner.
Okay, so here's my question for you. I know that we have cited them for several things. And so even if this does, whatever happens tonight with the other issues that are on the table, what will happen in that case, to deal with all these other things that they've been cited for? What's the next steps on those?
If the commission were to deny his special use permit request, we would continue with the notice of violations. We are prepared to begin administrative citations as it relates to heavy equipment. We've already submitted a citation for the driveways. And again, we've resolved the one and as it relates to the fences. So we would go through the standard protocol of issuing a citation essentially every 30 days, an increased amount each 30 days until that issue is resolved.
Thank you, Mr. Hand. I appreciate you saying what you said. And for my 2 cents worth is I'm deeply disappointed in Mr. Phillips and some of the things that he's done, because he represented himself as wanting to have a nice family retreat and things for animals and his kids to do, and asked for an ag, and then promptly did not use it that way. And I have a problem with people that come forward and do those sort of things. It makes it hard on everybody else. And it also means that we utilize our unified government employees to stay after the bad actors. And and I don't like to see our money wasted that way. So having said that, I move to deny.
Second.
So to be clear, the motion is to accept the recommendation for denial
Correct.
from the planning and zoning. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Correct. And
We have a motion.
an I vote then is an acceptance of the denial, correct?
Right.
Thank you.
Yes, yes. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Roll call, McKiernan,
Aye.
Ramirez,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Markley,
Aye.
Walters, Philbrook,
Aye.
Bynum,
Aye.
Burrows.
Aye.
The vote is 8-0. That motion carries.
Thank you. Rocky, are we able to get back to SP 2020-75?
Yes. Mr. Sutton,
Okay,
are you there?
nope, first,
No?
Mr. Mason,
Mr. Mason, hold on.
the
just-
applicant.
I see a Terry on. Terry, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
The Miss Mason?
Oh,
Yes,
it's Miss Mason. I'm sorry.
that's okay.
Thank you. Okay, Miss Mason, please give us, tell us about your application.
We have a group home, a group boarding home slash emergency shelter in 1634 South 29th Street. And the kids that we service are pretty much come from Department of DCF. We have a contract or working on our contract with KDHE to get the type of kids that we're not trying to get any kids that have criminal histories or juvenile detentions or anything like that. These are kids that pretty much were just taken from their home. And so our job, we have a therapist that's on staff, which nobody has that, a staff therapist on staff that will be doing counseling with our kids, one-on-one counseling groups. We'll also be doing therapy with parents to try to help them reunite with their children. And as far as I know, one of the issues people have mentioned was traffic, and we won't have any more traffic than really anybody that lives there. We have we can fit probably about 4 cars in our personal driveway and in the garage. And if it's an extra person, it will be outside, but pretty much it's just one staff there and the therapist that'll be there as well 3 or 4 times a week, managing, supervising, and going over everything with our consumers and our staff. And then as far as I know this I brought up before, as far as the kids' safety or them being, I guess, out in the community. They're never out in the community without staff. They're never outside without staff. They pretty much can't get out without staff knowing, because we have alarms on all the windows, alarms on the doors. They're just heavily monitored just to make sure. We want to give them a home environment, but we also want to make sure that they live, that the neighborhood feels safe as well. And we've had interactions before with other neighbors, just positive things or things that they wanted us to know that they were concerned about. So we try to address anything that has been brought to our attention, or if they have any type of complaints, or not even just complaints, if they have things, but I can't think of the word I want to use, but if they have something that they would like to suggest that we could do or to get to better know us or our individuals, then we've also discussed that as well. They can come visit the house, just kind of see what it look like, get a feel, and meet our kids and just be a part of the neighborhood, so they won't feel so, I guess, like, I understand their concern, but I'm just trying to help the kids in a home environment. That's just our major thing for us. But we have a pretty tight ship, a pretty good level system with the kids. If there are any issues, we have no problems. If they have to be removed, we will, but we try not to do that so they won't feel rejected. But if that's what has to happen, then that's what has to happen. But we're pretty good on the safety issue.
Thank you. I'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of SP 2020-75?
There are no hands raised, Mayor.
Okay. Is there anyone? No, it's no one public. Okay. Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk, any notification from the public who wish to express their comments in favor of this item?
No request for support, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All right, is there anyone in opposition who would like to speak on this item? If so, now is your time. Please state your name and address. Provide your comments. Rocky?
Mr. Sutton, you're able to speak.
Hey, thank you. My name is Matthew Sutton. I live at 1628 South 29th Street. I collected signatures for a petition. I don't know why it was invalidated, but but I think 8 of 11 of the homes within 200 feet of the property signed for their own reasons why they do not want a group home on our street. I think what Terry is doing is very noble. It is definitely a need, but we all moved into a residential neighborhood for our own reasons. And I think the petition spoke for itself. And I know in the past it had also been petitioned and invalidated. It's just not something we want in our neighborhood.
Yes. So is there anyone else who'd like to speak in opposition?
There are no hands raised, Mayor.
Thank you. Since there are no, did anybody submit a letter to the clerk's office?
Just Mr. Matthews, Sutton submitted his request.
Okay, thank you. All right, as there are no further comments or questions from the public, I'll close the public hearing. Ms. Mason, do you have any closing comments?
No, sir, I do not.
Thank you. All right, any members of the commission have any questions or comments? Commissioner Ramirez?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have comment and 2 questions. Ms. Mason, I want to thank you for providing this resource and this service for our children. Everyone knows my job is I work with children, and not every child is very fortunate to have a good home. And so what you provide is amazing, and I thank you for doing that. My only question I have is, how long do they stay in your group home? Is there a certain amount of time, or is it until they can, per se, get on their feet?
I would say, because it's a case management thing, so our longest time that we anticipate, maybe it's supposed to be 90 days, but they can ask for additional time. And if the child's on schedule doing everything that they're supposed to do, as far as what case management and the team has decided, they're doing very well in school and group therapy and personal therapy and family stuff, then they will be able to stay longer.
Okay, thank you. And my second question is to staff, to Gunner. What was the reason for the petition not being valid?
This is Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning. Commissioner Ramirez, so within the notice area, we basically have to collect enough signatures of property owners. Part of the reason is most of the area behind this house within the noticing area is Ruby Park. And that was probably the biggest contributor to the low percentage rate. They were just under 20%.
Okay, thank you for that. And last comment to you, Ms. Mason, again, thank you for what you're providing, and thank you for running a tight ship.
I appreciate
it. And continue doing what you're doing. And if there's anything you need, any help, please let me know. I'd be more than happy to help. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions from the commission? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
We have a motion and a second by Commissioner Johnson. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, roll call, please.
Roll call McKiernan,
Aye.
Ramirez,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Markley. Walters. Philbrook,
Aye.
Bynum,
Aye.
Burrows.
No.
The vote is 7-1. That motion carries.
Thank you. That takes us back to our non-consent agenda. Miscellaneous item 1A, Central Area Master Plan. The first is item 1B, Complete Streets Ordinance. I'd ask the staff to make the announcement. Oh,
Yes.
sorry, the first is the Central Area Master Plan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, this is Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Urban Design. We just really had two announcements. We wanted to make sure everybody was tracking some of the work that we've been doing. We had presented a draft version of the Central Area Plan at our August Planning and Zoning Committee meeting, hoping that we could move it forward in September. Because of the comments that we received from the public, from staff, from the Planning Commission, from the Board of Commissioners, we felt like we needed a little more time to do that. And so we've pushed that to our October, even though it's October 1st, October agenda. It'll be heard by the Planning Commission on the 12th, and then later in the month by the Board of Commissioners. We're hoping and anticipating recommendation and approval to the Board of Commissioners. We just want to let everybody know that that's coming. Staff is reviewing that final version right now. It should be finished by early next week, and then we'll push it out to the commissioners and everybody else for review. It looks a little bit different than the draft version. We did some fine tuning of the strategies, but again, we just wanted to put it on your guys' radar that that is coming in October, and that's one of our largest advanced planning projects going on right now. The second item, if I may, just go on to Complete Streets. I also wanted to follow up and just give another reminder that we've been working closely with a lot of community stakeholders, but also directly in partnership with the Department of Public Works on a Complete Streets ordinance. If you all recall, over the summer, we developed 3 different emergency ordinances, all of which essentially encouraged businesses to move into the public right-of-way or in the public realm, whether it's sidewalk cafes or in their front yard setback or developing parklets or even in off-street surplus parking. At the second and the third version of the emergency ordinances, I had mentioned that we were looking to potentially come back and develop an ordinance that would make that public right-of-way a safer place. I also noted that we were essentially beta testing a lot of these ideas to incorporate into our update to our zoning code as permanent solutions. And so the Complete Streets Ordinance is a follow-up to the 2011 Complete Streets Resolution that the Board of Commissioners passed. We believe, again, we're working with the community, and we believe we're developing a policy that will support safer streets in the future. Also gives us the flexibility to apply that philosophy across our very diverse county and our many neighborhoods. But also, essentially, it'll put us in compliance with the state of Kansas, which has a Complete Streets policy of its own. So essentially, we're out of compliance with the state. This is not to set standards. It is not to put a bike lane or sidewalks on every road. It is simply to consider all users of the public right-of-way when we make decisions about certain roadway projects moving forward. And so, again, we wanted to put that on everybody's radar. It looks like we will be, because it is dealing with public right-of-way and because it is in partnership with Public Works, we're actually going to be bringing that to your Public Works Standing Committee on the 26th. And if that moves forward, it looks like it'll be at the Board of Commissioners on the 19th. So as soon as we develop that resolution early in the next week or so. We'll be posting that for the standing committee for everyone's review. And so just an announcement on those two items. Happy to take questions if anybody has any.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hand. That concludes the planning and zoning portion of tonight's meeting. We'll now move to the regular portion of our agenda. First item under the mayor's agenda, reappointment of Megan Schultz as the municipal court judge. Any comments or questions?
Second.
We have a motion and a second
Whoever you want to pick.
by Commissioner McKiernan. We'll go that way. Roll call, please.
Roll call, McKiernan,
Aye.
Ramirez,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Markley, Walters,
Aye.
Gilbrook,
Aye.
Bynum,
Aye.
Earls.
Aye.
Vote is 8-0, that motion carries.
The next item is the appointment of Commissioners Bynum and Markley to witness the destruction of election ballots and records.
Move to approve as submitted.
Second, Johnson.
Please take video for us. We have a motion to roll call, please.
Roll call, McKiernan,
Aye.
Ramirez, Johnson,
Aye.
Markley, Walters,
Aye.
Gilbrook,
Aye.
Bynum,
Aye.
Earls.
Aye.
Vote is 8-0, that motion carries.
We only wish that wasn't as exciting as it sounds.
The destruction of ballots.
So much more fun. Yeah.
Item number 3 is appointing me and Mike Taylor as voting delegates for the 2020 League of Kansas Municipalities Conference that will be held virtually.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Roll call, McKiernan,
Aye.
Ramirez,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Markley, Walters, Gilbrook,
Aye.
Bynum,
Aye.
Earls.
Aye.
Vote is 8-0, that motion carries.
Item number 4 is appointing Mike Taylor as the voting delegate for the Kansas Association of Counties, also held virtually.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Roll call, McKiernan,
Aye.
Ramirez,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Markley, Walters,
Aye.
Gilbrook,
Aye.
Bynum,
Aye.
Earls.
Aye.
Vote is 8-0, that motion carries.
Thank you. Next, regular consent agenda. Does any member of the commission or county administrator wish to set aside any item on the regular consent agenda? If an item is not set aside, all items on the regular consent agenda will be voted on by one vote.
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Roll call, McKiernan,
Aye.
Ramirez,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Markley, Walters,
Aye.
Gilbrook,
Aye.
Bynum,
Aye.
Earls.
Aye.
Vote is 8-0, that motion carries.
That takes us to the administrator's agenda. Item number 1 is a resolution relating to the Boyer Medical Office Building Assignment and Assumption Agreement. Mr. Bach?
Standing committee.
Standing committee first.
Standing committee agenda.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Did I just skip a page? Yes, I did. I just turned 2 pages. Darn, you caught me.
You were on a train.
Ah. Okay, here we go. Standing committee agenda. One item, setting a public hearing date of November 5th to consider redevelopment project plans for the Village East Star Bond District. It was presented on Monday to the Neighborhood and Community Development Standing Committee, received unanimous vote to approve and forward to full commission. Any comments, Mr. McKiernan?
Actually, this was presented to Economic Development and Finance Committee.
Yes, it would have been.
Monday.
Yeah. Well, that's not what it says here. My magic words have lost their magic. Commissioner Burrows.
Mayor, all this does is set the public hearing for the project. I would ask the commissioners to advance this. It is important that the development have the opportunity to be supported by our local community for the public hearing.
Move to approve as submitted.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Roll call, McKiernan,
Aye.
Ramirez,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Markley, Walters,
Aye.
Gilbrook,
Aye.
Bynum,
Aye.
Earls.
Aye.
Motion is passed, vote 8-0.
All right, now we have the resolution relating to the Boyer Medical Office Building Assignment and Assumption Agreement. Mr. Bach.
Thank you, Mayor. All the projects done in the Star District areas. We put restrictions on them that require someone to come before us to get an assignment and acknowledgement when they convey property. Ms. Carter, our Director of Economic Development, is here if you have any questions or issues on this, but this is a fairly straightforward move to convey that property through this assignment and acknowledgement and assumption form. I would recommend approval.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, we have a motion to approve by Commissioner Markley and a second by Mr. Ramirez. Roll call, please.
Roll call, McKiernan.
Aye.
Ramirez.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Markley. Walters.
Aye.
Gilbreath.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Burrows.
Aye.
The vote is 8-0. That motion carries.
And again, we're not covering snow removal, so our last item for the evening relates to casino funds awarded to ONDA. Mr. Cross will present this item. Emmerich?
I don't see him, but I can.
He's coming on.
Okay.
Hello, Mayor, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Yes, the Argentine Neighborhood Development Association has requested to change their scope of services. Funds they received for the 2020 casino grant process. They would like to move their funding from more than an eyesore beating blight to a more COVID-focused scope of services. Commissioner Markley was the only one that committed casino funds to that association, that organization, in the amount of $4,409. And they would like to use those funds for this new scope of services that is submitted with the attachment.
Any comments or questions?
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
I believe it's for information only.
Oh, it's information only.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Even better.
thank you.
All right.
That concludes our meeting for the evening. Thank you all for your attendance. We are adjourned.